Okay, so this is our second attempt at a Last Jedi discussion. Being that the theme of the film is failure, I think it's only appropriate that we got 10 minutes into our discussion before losing all of it.
Yeah. It's an example of failure,
Right,
is
and
what you're saying.
now we're going to learn from it like Rey does and Kylo doesn't.
Yes.
Spoilers, by the way.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
In fact, it'll be built on spoiling things for you.
Yeah,
And
so...
only if you've never watched it before. By the way, I'm Jordan,
And I am Liam.
and we have never done this before.
And we're the spoiler guys.
No,
no,
we're not
I'm
the
kidding.
spoiling guys.
All right.
I bet you that's probably already a podcast.
Almost certainly.
Yep.
It's all been done before.
We are not the spoiler guys.
No. If I could make one thing clear in this discussion, it'd be that. But,
Yeah.
all right, so let's do what we did before, but not... all right, let me try that again.
Yeah.
So let's just go through our relationship with Star Wars.
Our relationship with Star Wars. Okay, so I am in my, painfully to say, my mid-40s.
Oh, my God.
And it's painful because of the realization, not because there's anything wrong with it. In fact, I kind of enjoy it.
Okay.
More so. But anyway, that's an aside.
Right.
That being said, I was born in 1973, so when the original Star Wars came out, which was
were
1977 or 76.
You know what that means?
What?
It means that you were the same age for each part of that trilogy as I was when the prequels came out.
Oh.
You were 4, then 7, then 10.
I am uncle and Liam is nephew.
That's
so
true.
we have a 2-generation perspective. We're also tight, as they say.
Yeah. What? Don't try and break up this team. We'll cut your head off.
Occasionally, anybody who's listening is going to hear me express an ow or some expression of pain because I have a little cat who wants more attention than I'm willing to give at the moment.
Sure.
Anyway,
So first movie came out when you were 4.
yes. And I believe I saw it in the theater only because we're talking about the late 70s, and that's probably the only way one could watch something.
Right.
Back then. The VHS thing hadn't happened. In fact, I remember when it did happen, it was around Rocky 3, the first time we got invited to go to someone's house who owned a VCR.
Right.
That we didn't own.
That was
and
like
they were out of
$500.
town, so we were invited to go watch VCR tapes or rented tapes on theirs. Previous to that, my dad would borrow a movie projector.
Oh, yeah?
From the library, which
Wow.
was a place you could get lots of different things. And we would watch movies on film.
You could get a whole movie on a film spool that you could project?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it would take forever to set up, and then we'd sit down. And a movie night was like a thing.
Right.
Like a heavy-duty, big-time situation.
Sounds cool.
Yeah. And we watched a lot of things like that. Star Wars probably we watched projected that way too. But because the frequency of the ease of watching stuff was low.
Right.
You had to go and work hard if you wanted to rewatch something over and over.
Right.
The one version of Star Wars that I had on the ready all the time was the radio version that we listened to all the time.
Right.
So I'm extremely familiar with it from that perspective as well. And so one of the things that happened today is I said that I disliked that there are new things in the Last Jedi that can block a lightsaber blade.
Right. There are now things that lightsabers can't cut through.
Right. Well, Force Awakens had them too, but there are things that can block a lightsaber blade, which there never was before.
There is in Revenge of the Sith.
Right. But my point is, my perspective on what canon was came from the radio program, which Liam heard for the first time.
Just now.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the cave with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke when they first meet in A New Hope, in the radio version, he says, "Be careful, the blade can cut through anything."
Right. Yeah, and that's a perfect example of the endless retconning and changes to canon that have always been present in Star Wars from the beginning. So I've gone through a long journey of my perception of Star Wars, and it's gotten me to the point where changes to canon are just how it functions. You know, it's an ongoing universe that can have almost anything in it. And I'm more willing to roll with the punches Star Wars wise these days.
I am too, because as they said in that video I watched, which seems to be there's no positive reviews on YouTube anyway.
No.
Of The Last Jedi.
Right. We should probably say right away that we both liked the movie. I loved it.
Yeah, I generally approve of it, but my taste is like tainted by I want more. I always want more, and usually it's like when someone goes, "This is the best thing you're ever going to eat," and they sit there and coach you on it being the best thing you're ever going to eat, or the best whatever.
Sure.
I've tried this, and now this is going to be amazing, and you're not going to believe it. It usually can't live up to that expectation if you adopt the expectation.
Right.
So that being said, I tried to constantly back up and when I was watching it and just let myself enjoy the little things. Enjoy it as a film, as an adventure.
Right.
And for largely I did.
Right.
Right.
Well, cool. Yeah, so in terms of my history with Star Wars, I'm a 22-year-old person. So when Phantom Menace came out, I was 4 years old, and I thought it was awesome. And then I saw Attack of the Clones when I was 7, and I thought it was awesome. And then I saw Revenge of the Sith when I was 10, and I thought it was awesome. And then over the next 3 or 4 years, I sort of started to develop critical thinking about just very basic storytelling, basic dialogue, basic acting, which the prequel trilogy doesn't survive a test on any of those fronts.
Right.
I'm now at the point where I just love Star Wars, even if it's terrible.
Right.
And I don't find that to be much of a contradiction because even the terrible ones have really cool things in them. Like I think the pod race is one of the coolest science fiction ideas that I've ever seen on screen.
Sure.
It's just a fun idea. It's jet engines instead of horses, for your chariots. It's a cool idea. But the movies, as movies, they're often boring and nonsensical.
Right.
But despite that, I love watching them. So that's basically my journey with Star Wars. And then when Disney bought the franchise, I was thinking, oh great, they'll erase the prequels from canon, maybe, or they'll retcon things so that it all makes more sense, because the prequels and the original films don't really coexist peacefully. There's a lot of direct contradictions still. But I'm a big fan, actually, of the way this new series has addressed that the official Star Wars canon doesn't make a lot of sense and is just pushing on anyway.
Inherently built into the movies when the success of Star Wars became the idea for more movies because it was so well received and intentioned. Initially, the intention was for it to be a standalone, singular movie.
Right.
And then it was renamed Star Wars: A New Hope and given an episode number.
Right.
After the fact.
Right.
I don't know what retconning means, by the way.
Oh, it's retroactive continuity.
Continuity.
Yeah.
I got the ret part.
Right.
Sense.
Retroactive continuity. So you're in the next installment of a series.
Or attempts to explain continuity problems from all the stuff before.
Or it'll even just say, oh, remember when I said that Anakin was killed by Darth Vader? What I really meant was Anakin became Darth Vader. That's a retcon.
Oh, yeah. Because
you can actually change what the intention was.
Actually, this is a thought on the Last Jedi.
Yeah.
They demonstrate how that can happen in The Last Jedi when you have the Kylo Ren explanation of the breakup of the band of him and Luke Skywalker.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have Luke Skywalker's version of what happened when they broke up the band.
Right.
And so that is
then you have
a built-in retcon right there. So all the time before, it's all the history is written by me.
Right.
Yeah,
it's all perspective. I love that whole thing because Luke's first telling of it is very general and very whitewashed. No lightsabers are turned on during it. And then Kylo's is true from his perspective. From his perspective,
he turned around and there was a dude with a raised lightsaber
with a pained expression on his face.
It was more than that. He had some Sith. Age lines. There.
His interpretation of Luke's shame of turning on the lightsaber was intense, seething hatred.
Right.
But that's understandable because he was a twisted, little guy.
Right.
And it kind of does establish that he was kind of just a bad egg.
Yeah.
That Snoke didn't have a lot of trouble making into a murderer.
Right. So some of the things about the Force.
Right.
Okay, the Force in general. The Force as a religion. The Force as a religion in the prequels. No, not the prequels. The Force as a religion in the first 3 movies, and killed as a religion in a sense in the prequels because it turned it into a chemical quantity.
Right. Well, like I would say it's a religion. I'd say Jedi is the religion. Force is the spiritual concept that was turned into less of one.
Well, let's say okay. So not a spiritual concept.
Right.
It was turned into a chemical quantity.
Right.
In the prequels.
Right.
And then
Anakin had more Force than Yoda did.
Yeah. And I'm saying just get a jar of it. Right. And a teaspoon.
Yeah.
And just
just eat that.
Munch some stuff down. It's like MSG, man. Makes everything taste better.
Yeah.
You can actually buy a jar of MSG.
You would think,
Metachlorian jar.
Right.
Probably a powder or paste.
Because if it's in your blood.
Water soluble.
Right. Because shouldn't there be a black market of like injectable midichlorians?
Injectable, man.
Yeah.
Eye drops.
It's in your blood.
Eye drops.
Well, sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Between the toes, maybe into your, treat it like heroin.
Right. It probably would be. Except you wouldn't get high. You'd just...
Hey, buddy, you holding?
gotta get some of those midichlorians, man.
So bad.
I haven't lifted a rock in 3 weeks. Yeah.
So then it was returned to a spiritual thing, except for not really. So in the original 3,
right,
4, 5, and 6,
right,
you had a spiritual thing.
Right, very, very Buddhist.
Episodes 1, 2, and 3, it turns it into a chemical compound.
Right, that very intensely regimented, celibate, emotionless monks who are part of an army make use of.
And then you have in 7 and 8, it is turned into a scientific phenomenon. More of a string theory / quantum mechanics kind of a thing.
It's almost like a merging of the two ideas. It is like string theory mixed with the Buddhist idea of sort of karmic energy.
Sure. So this is my way nitpicky.
Sure.
Over the top.
There's going to be a lot of nitpicking.
Sure, of course, because what the hell? We liked it.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? We like all of it. We wouldn't be taking the time to talk about Star Wars in particular, as opposed to anything else, philosophy, politics, book reviews, you name it, food,
sure, all
of which, we all consume.
Right.
I do.
Yeah.
So my nitpicky problem with the Force in the new one is similar. That they've always talked about the light and the dark being a dichotomy. It's very yin and yang.
Right.
And then in the prequels, you have the setup of the balance.
Bringing balance to the Force.
I mean, they talked about balance in the original 3 too, but they talked about it
not so much.
Yeah, but they referenced balance, but they did not say it directly means the yin and yang of one Sith and one Jedi.
Right.
Which they also didn't do, at least in the pure balance perspective in the prequels, because there is a hell of a lot of Jedi.
Right.
And seemingly, Sith, the only 2 there is,
Right.
So Yoda talks about there being always a master and apprentice in the Sith, and then in 6 and 7, they talk about there being an equivalent Jedi for every Sith.
Sure.
Or every practitioner of the dark side, which changes things.
It does.
And it's new.
Especially because the official canon has sort of been, and it doesn't make much sense, so I'm fine with changing it, because as I said, I'm rolling with the punches with Star Wars now. I think everyone who's really precious about the Star Wars canon is like, you missed the memo that was sent out 30 years ago, because this is just the way that they're telling this story, because it's a universe that was made up really haphazardly by kind of a crazy person, I would say. George Lucas is kind of a nut.
Right. I mean, he named the main character after himself.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I didn't realize that until just now.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, well, and Luke has always been analogous to George Lucas, because he's a little farm boy who goes on an adventure, meets mentors, learns about this new world where it'd be filmmaking for Lucas. It was the Force with Luke. And even now to this point, because it actually is a cool parallel, because he becomes the master of his own world. He saves the world by inventing Star Wars, blowing up the Death Star.
Sure.
Becomes a hero, a legend, keeps going with success after success, and then, in his hubris, he becomes a legend, and makes 3 terrible movies, fails miserably, and then he just goes into hiding.
It is exactly Luke Skywalker.
Right.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Amazing. So that is our unique revelation
Right.
perspective. Hopefully, no one else. We did not steal that.
No.
If someone else, well, I didn't steal it at all.
I didn't
That was
steal
all
it.
from your brainy poo.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
So the other part, the problem I have, and this is actually something we were discussing a little while ago, about which religion elements does it mirror in real life.
Right.
The Force, the Jedi, so obviously if you have a savior, if you have a chosen one, that is a Judeo-Christian kind of
Right.
thing, and then you have the
Yeah,
yin and yang of the light versus dark.
Right.
I mean, there's light and dark in Christendom too, but at the same time, it's not an equal thing.
It's not about balance being healthy.
Right.
Which is actually how the prequels treat it. It's like balance means that there's no Sith, I guess. Like there's no dark side.
Right. And then in 6 and 7, I mean 7
But
and
I think
8.
now they're saying that was wrong.
Right. Yeah. So in 7 and 8, we have the Force requires balance. They keep doing, like when she did the mirror thing and when we do this stuff, that there is a requirement for balance, so you could never stop fighting each other.
Sure.
They never get to stop. But one thing that I found was interesting is if you believe what they say, which obviously you can't entirely believe it because of the need for what is, quote, canon.
Right.
Needs to be ever-moving football.
Right.
But if you believe what they say, Snoke forced Kylo Ren into having conflict to trick Rey into thinking that she could sway someone who was 100% dedicated to the dark.
So
Hold on, let me finish the thing.
Yeah.
So so you can argue whether or not he was bluffing or it's true. We have to take it at face value because as far as we can tell, Kylo Ren is in fact dedicated 100% to the dark.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody keeps arguing, but it's hopefulness, it seems, because he keeps doing exactly what the dark side needed. In fact,
Right.
killing Snoke.
He doubles down every single time.
Right. He doubles down, he kills. And the only time where he demonstrates the slightest hint, which could be part of what Snoke imposed, the whole idea of gave him some
Conflict.
conflict.
He says he stirred his conflicted soul, something like that.
And then that was only demonstrated in his lack of targeting where he knew his mom was.
Right.
Leia was
They do the great little
so she
callback
takes the
to
thing
Luke
off,
and Leia's.
but he doesn't stop the others from firing. He just didn't want to be guilty of it himself, apparently,
Right.
of killing both. Anyway, so Snoke takes credit
Right.
for his conflict,
Sure.
where there is no real conflict. In contrast to Luke Skywalker talking about the dark side and Jedis dealing with the conflict perpetually.
Okay.
So in that sense, they are not dichotomy. They're not equal sides of balance.
So
because the Jedi constantly have to deal with the temptation of the dark side.
Right.
But the Sith apparently never do.
deal with the temptation of the light?
Correct.
Well, Kylo does in Force Awakens.
I know, but it maybe was still an imposition of Snoke.
See, I interpret it differently. I think Snoke he's clearly very powerful in the Force, but I think a lot of it is him just taking credit for bigger picture stuff that he's not in control of. Like, I think he probably did bridge their minds, as he says, but I think that they're...
Because they were both surprised by it.
Yeah, they didn't... Yeah, they thought the Force was just connecting them naturally.
Right.
Which maybe it was, and he's taking credit for it, but I think it makes a lot more sense.
We can't make the assumption. We have to literally go off what they say. So
Right, but I think he's taking credit for Kylo Ren being as conflicted as he is.
Sure.
Because he was pretty isolated when he didn't kill Leia. And also, one thing I love that actually is kind of similar to the 3 different versions of the same story. When they touch hands and they both get a vision of each other turning,
Yeah.
the actual words they use, it does happen for both of them, except that they interpreted it wrong. The conclusion doesn't go the way they thought, but they did see the same thing. because Rey says, when the time comes, you won't bow before Snoke, you'll turn. And then Kylo says, I know that when the time comes, you'll stand with me. And he doesn't bow before Snoke.
And they do fight side by side.
Right.
Right.
But
then they part ways because their underlying intentions are, I want to go the good route of egalitarian freedoms.
Right.
Totally,
and my friend's not being blown up.
And my friend's not being blown up. And you want to go the route of, I actually want it to be the dark maestro.
Right. I want to be the head honcho, which it's the only time we've ever actually, because, the whole rule of two thing that Yoda says, they expand on that, never in the movies, but in official canon, the whole idea of the Sith is that you become a master and you try to find an apprentice, and you're basically trying to train him or her to be strong enough to kill you someday.
Right.
Because that means that you're serving power above all else. And then either you win or they win. In either case, power has been strengthened in the dark side. Whether they usurp you or you maintain your position.
So how? Okay. So it's more like the movie for the Sith. It's more like the movie. What's that movie?
I don't know.
With the Scottish guy that cuts off the head. There could be only one.
I've never seen it.
Oh, shit! I almost had it. I did. I lost it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But the goal is that you're serving power above all else, and if your apprentice kills you, then you've actually succeeded in creating a more powerful being than you. But it's just interesting that it's the first time we've ever actually seen that anyone usurp their master in a canon film.
Really?
Because that's been canon since Phantom Menace.
I
mean, Vader does kill the Emperor, of course, but he then
turns. Right, he does it to switch. He does it literally to switch, not to. Isn't there, and doesn't he kill No, he doesn't. That is Palpatine.
Right.
Right.
Just tosses him in the pit.
Yeah, whose head does he chop off?
He chops off Count Dooku's head.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So he gets a little bit out of that, too.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, that would probably be a big win for Palpatine. He's like, all right, my future apprentice just killed my current apprentice. Big win for the power thing.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've gotten a little distracted, so I'll just talk about let's talk about the split of the fandom. Like you mentioned, going through YouTube, it's very difficult to find a positive review on YouTube.
Right, and there's a lot of reasons for that. One, it's the problems with keeping cohesion in Star Wars in general.
Right, which I maintain you just need to abandon that whole idea.
Right, so you have everybody who wants to seem special by pointing out inconsistencies. Right. The more inconsistencies you find and unique inconsistencies, the more likely you're going to be seen as true fan, super reviewer. Right. Plus, there's more fuel in trashing something as far as entertainment,
especially something as popular as Star Wars.
Right. Than there is in reviewing, like seeking out the positives.
Right. And I'm not saying you're wrong if you don't like it. Obviously, it's all subjective. And I actually do get this movie not being what you wanted, because I think a lot of people, it's funny because Luke literally says, what did you expect, that I was going to come in with a laser sword and face down the whole First Order? I think a lot of fans were like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted.
Right.
And I don't even care what the plot is. I just wanted to see Luke go to town with a lightsaber.
You want to see him go Jedi ham.
And I kind of do too.
Right.
And but it's like we were talking about before, where before we were recording, they had no choice with Luke's characterization given what they decided to do from the get-go with this new trilogy. Because you have George Lucas's original ideas of Luke going into hiding, there being a new girl Jedi, and there being a Jedi killer who killed all the Jedi and kills Han Solo. Those were all George Lucas's original ideas that they kept through to the end. But when they wrote Force Awakens, they realized that every time Luke entered the story, it was completely about him and it wasn't about the main characters anymore. So they left him till the end. But then you have to explain why the good Jedi Master Luke would hide when Han Solo is being killed. Because in all of the previous films, he's obsessed with trying. First movie, he says, we have to save Leia. Second movie, he says, I have to save my friends. They're in danger in Cloud City. Third movie, he says, I have to save my father. And I think the explanation that they get, I think Rian Johnson did the best you could possibly do, given what the story had to be. Right. And it didn't have to be, but given what he had to do with the story, I think he did it perfectly. But I actually agree that I wish it had been about like Luke's students who have been trained in his temple successfully, and then go on a completely unrelated mission with nothing even remotely like the Empire. I don't like that it's just another Empire.
Right.
I wish the Empire was gone.
With exactly the same army.
Right.
Exactly the same army.
Just different armor.
Slightly.
Yeah.
I mean, it no different than, for example, the armor changes from Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi.
Right. Just very,
I mean, you
very
just had
minor
variations.
stuff.
You had the squarer, what is it, speeder bike?
Right.
Armor.
The scout trooper guys.
Scout trooper guys,
Yeah.
and you had like, I mean, you just have variations on a theme.
Right.
And it's the same exact thing. Their armor is white and they're
Shaped the same.
shaped with black underwear.
Right.
You know, rubbery underwear.
Yeah, and the officers are all British, and
Right.
they're all just they just get off on being assholes.
They're a variation on the Nazi high command.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
Except for British.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I wish that I don't like what the original Legends, now they're Legends. They used to be Expanded Universe and canon. Now they're just called Legends. But in those books, Luke does start a successful training temple, and then the galaxy gets attacked by the Yuuzhan Vong, which are like a purely organic intergalactic species. They have like organic ships that are made of monsters, and they're big, monstrous, slimy guys who...
Wait, what is this?
This is the books. This is the trilogy of books written by, I think, Timothy Zahn.
Wow.
And it takes place after the eventual Return of the Jedi, pretty soon after. Luke starts a training temple. He marries someone, has kids. Han and Leia get married, have kids. One of their kids turns evil, actually, kind of like in this. But all their kids are Jedi, and it's mostly about them. And then the Yuuzhan Vong, this alien race, comes in and like wipes out half the galaxy. And all I'm saying is I don't like that either.
Right, but there is room for other powerful bad organizations.
Right.
But the
Or even just a bad guy, like or like a small scale story that takes place on, in one solar system or something. You could, like, the thing that's cool about the Star Wars universe is there's almost nothing from our world that you can't do in it. Like, I didn't feel that the casino felt out of place at all, because we already know that Han Solo has dice and that he won the Millennium Falcon in a card game.
Right.
So clearly there are casinos, and there always
Obviously.
have been.
Right.
So I'm at the point now where I'm like, where's the suburb planet? I'll accept anything in Star Wars.
Sure. Suburb planet would be awesome.
Right?
I want to see some intergalactic
Strip
malls and cul-de-sacs.
Right.
With one basketball hoop.
Yeah, but it's floating.
Yeah. Obviously.
Right. So that being said, I am disappointed and I was from the beginning. When I first saw the trailer, I was like, oh, the Empire's back. Okay.
Right.
I guess we're doing this again.
So this is the thing about the Empire. And the Empire Part 2 with the New Order.
Right.
Which they renamed themselves in homage to the original. Sure. Otherwise, you wouldn't need the word new.
Right. It's first.
The First Order.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was the New Order. Oh, that's the band. Anyway, so the First Order, whatever. So they aren't an homage to the other ones. But they borrowed a lot of the same uniforms. They borrowed this world domination, the idea for a planet-killing ball station, a Death Star, if you will.
Yeah.
They borrowed a lot of stuff. But some of the things that are different, that doesn't have anything to do with canon, but it's just different from the original 3 in the late 70s and early 80s to the progression into now. So we talked about the difference in the perspective of the Force and the perspective on the Jedi situation, the dichotomy between the light and the dark, and how you have you need an equal light guy to an equal dark guy now, but you didn't in the past. And so it was just a sensing of two different fields. So you could feel the presence in a dark presence when the Alderaan was blown up. He felt the dying of the souls and stuff like that.
Right.
So it was a position on each other, but not having such a seesaw, ping pong battle type situation. But
right, because it kind of raises the question of, like, was Luke right? Because if the Jedi keeps going, won't that mean that there will always be Sith to fight? And doesn't that just mean more planets are going to get blown up?
Yeah, so there is no if they actually ever win, which the Force doesn't ever go away, but the Force requires a light presence and a dark presence. Apparently, so that means they never get to stop fighting, which is kind of cool considering when we have perpetual movies to enjoy.
Right.
But
it makes me sad for all the people in the universe.
Right, because they're all just the subject to the universe's worst ping pong match.
And we see that in Luke and Han, because they, at the end of Return of the Jedi, they're happy, they've won.
Right.
And then Han gives birth to a kid.
Right.
Han Solo himself gives birth to Kylo Ren, and who ends up murdering him. Right.
So this is another big difference between the old ones and the new ones, is the adultness of the adults.
Right.
So if you go
There's a lack of optimism.
There's a lack of adultness in the new ones. Everybody behaves like they don't have a frontal cortex a little bit more. Everybody is, so the only one in the original ones
in the new ones?
In the new ones, they behave like they don't have a frontal cortex. They don't have fully developed reason. So they behave emotionally. Everything is emotional reaction. And in fact, even the ladies who
Rey and Kylo should. Are you saying Luke does as well?
Well, I'm saying like Leia and the purple-haired lady. What was her name again? Holdo. They do as well, but it's not an emotional reaction to the problem. It's an emotional reaction to their perceived place in leadership. Sure. So she listens to Poe react emotionally to what he thinks he's supposed to do, and then it's an emotional reaction, just not about the same thing. Hers is an emotional reaction about his apparent attempt to take who's in charge.
Right. So in which scene, like when he comes in and he sees they're fueling up?
And he demands to know what her plan is, and then she puts him in his place about she's the one who's actually in charge.
Right. And hey, buddy, you lost us our whole fleet, and you're so impulsive. We don't need that right now.
And so it's not necessarily a display of emotion, but it isn't a conversation. It isn't this is why I am in charge. Sure. Here's the thing I know.
Right.
It is just understand that there's a strata and you aren't on the same one as me.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is.
So compared to, sorry.
No problem.
Compared to the New Hope and Empire Strikes Back in particular, they have, the First Order also in this movie is all buffoons.
Totally.
They're all emotional buffoons and self-possessed.
Hux is kind of comic relief in this movie.
He is, and they all look like morons. Yeah. As opposed to leadership in the Empire.
Right.
Governor Tarkin.
Right.
Those people are fucking scary. Right. They are terrifying. They have a resolve and a control of the circumstance. So we have two groups of people who have apparent control of their own circumstances. Right. And so you have the best of the best pairing off against each other. Right. So you have the dark side of the Empire mixed with the dark side of Lord Vader, who is 100% in control. Right. And he abdicates authority to Governor Tarkin and other people in the Empire. Right. He allows that to happen, and he takes more command later on. Right. He becomes the premier leadership. Sure. But there is they understand their rank. They never challenge each other. Right. As you wish. He even says to Governor Tarkin, he will do as the other guy says. Right. And that guy is a grown-up man. Right. That dude is 100% in command. And in Empire, the same thing. And guess who's the only... Sorry, I'm almost done. Yeah, please. And I'm long-winded, and I apologize. It's okay. So the only person who is rash is the only one who's youth. Right. Luke Skywalker. Yeah. Right. And even though Leia is the same age, she also has she's grown up in a position of, I understand that I'm going to be in a position of authority, and she assumes that right out of the gate, and she does get a little snotty with Governor Tarkin. She gets a little snotty with Vader. Han Solo as well. Han Solo, she gets some stuff. But that's just great characterization. Han Solo is a self-centered grown-up. Right. He is 100%, he's always like, don't get cocky, he's saying stuff that's like, he's very self-possessed alpha. Right, sure. But there's no buffoons. Right. No buffoons. Yeah, it's true, except like C-3PO. Right. He's comic relief. Right. He is the first attempt he's the archetype for what Jar Jar destroyed. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that always bothers me because there was this weird string of
prequel defense when Force Awakens was coming out that I suspect Disney was kind of funding because now half their property is garbage, so they need to make people think it's not.
Right.
Weird, constant string of the prequels aren't as bad as you think, and if you're naming your article that, you've already failed.
Yeah.
You're protesting too much. Stop it. But one of the biggest things they'll always say is, in addition to dumb things like the lightsaber fights are cooler, they'll say that, hey, yeah, Jar Jar's annoying, but so is C-3PO. So now you have to hate more of Star Wars to make it okay that other parts were bad?
Jar Jar had no personality.
None.
C-3PO had a personality.
Right. Jar Jar has an annoying, incomprehensible speech pattern, and that's it.
Right.
He's clumsy, and you can't understand what he's saying.
Yeah. So they made a robot neurotic.
Right.
Which is hilarious.
It's awesome.
It's great.
Yeah.
Oh, he had all his...
Oh, I hate flying. And
yeah.
He cares about getting dirty when it couldn't possibly matter to him because he's a robot.
Yeah, and he has needs, like in the cave when in Obi-Wan Kenobi's house, when Luke and Obi-Wan first hang out, he says, with your permission, I'd like to shut down for a while.
Right.
He's like, I honestly just need a nap.
Right.
I really need it. It comes from him. It's not a command from
anybody else. And actually, I will say, I love C-3PO in Last Jedi. Yeah. I love the part where he's like, it would be quite against my programming to be party to a mutiny. It is not proper protocol. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Finally, we got some good 3PO, because he hasn't been good in many of these movies.
No, because they're always like, everybody's accustomed to 3PO's shtick.
Right.
And we need to provide them with unaccustomed 3PO replacement.
Right.
That's why we have, or that's why we don't have R2D2, who makes the teeniest of cameos.
Yeah, he's not in it much.
Love R2D2.
Me too.
There's no reason why we're an ageless robot that serves exactly the same function as BB-8 does.
It's true.
Needs to be usurped by BB-8.
But BB-8 is...
He's great.
Yeah.
It's
not necessary.
Now we have two.
Right. But and it goes into the same thing of if it must be this way, Rian Johnson does an awesome job of using R2-D2 in an effective way.
Sure. And also, there's no possible way Poe is going to actually come across and need R2-D2 exactly the same way. So obviously he's needed because there's not only one cute dome-shaped droid in the universe.
Right.
There might be two.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's the dark side BB-8.
Yeah, that's a little silly, but I actually didn't mind it. I actually think it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And he's the one to catch him in the little thing.
They have a sense for each other.
I think that's great.
Like two cats in the same house.
Right. Yeah, see, this is another thing that people criticize in this movie is that it's goofy. And, like, what planet do you live on? Star Wars has been goofy forever, and it has always had cute little squeaky things. From day one, there's a little mouse droid robot that Chewbacca scares. Yeah. The Jawas a little bit, but they're kind of more creepy.
Yeah, and then of course, over the top with the Muppets take the Star Wars universe in the Return of the Jedi.
Right, it's a little much.
Yeah, did I say that joke already?
You said that in our deleted version.
In our deleted version.
Yeah, the last episode.
Yeah, the last episode of the Muppets Take the Universe. Yeah. But I always, my favorite all-time cutesy characters were the clarinet players, of course, in A New Hope, whose faces look like a fat man's abdomen.
Or a butt.
Like a fat man who lost a whole bunch of weight and hasn't had the skin removed, and that's what their face looks like.
It's just flabby.
Like their torso.
Yeah, and there's just a weird shape with a hole in it for their mouth to put a clarinet in. How do they speak?
Yeah.
I don't care.
I can only imagine that those guys never go home and their wife is like, how was your day? And then the flabby, unremoved skin clarinet players are like, long.
I just keep playing the same song over and over.
Nobody ever makes any requests.
Yeah.
I don't know why they have a falsetto voice, but they do.
It makes sense. I can see that.
I have one character.
You better talk to Seth Green about doing some robot chicken work.
Yeah, one character.
It's the high voice guy?
Yeah. Would you like to hear my impression of anyone who doesn't have a line? Hi, I'm that character.
Okay. Do the other one.
Hi.
Oh, man. Wow. You weren't kidding.
Yeah. I'm not that guy. I'm a different one.
You're from Rick and Morty, I think.
Oh, no. Shit. Okay. We have to not make that mistake.
Right. Just doing Rick and Morty stuff. Yeah. Let's get out of that territory.
Okay. So we talked about the Force. Mm-hmm. We talked about the lack of need for continuity.
Right.
The whole idea that canon is a waste of time, perhaps.
As long as the story is fun to watch and you like
Right.
the characters, which
Right.
let's get into that, because I think that Rey and Kylo Ren are probably the most interesting characters in all of Star Wars. And I think you could make a case for many characters, but for my money, they're my favorite now.
I think young Leia and Han Solo.
In Empire Strikes Back?
I think just in general, young Leia, I think actually Han Solo is by far. See, you have to. He's the most iconic. He's the most unrepeatable. Yeah. He's the most. I can't do any version, any age that isn't Harrison Ford.
Which is why the Han Solo movie is going to be garbage.
And the reason why it keeps getting backed out is because they're probably realizing that they have the thing. It's like he's like John Wayne.
Right.
There isn't a thing he can do.
We're kind of skipping over that just because we've already talked about it. But just the idea that the Han Solo movie, we believe, must be terrible because Han Solo is too iconic, and the whole time you watch it, you're just going to be thinking that's not Harrison Ford.
Right. So Rey and Kylo Ren are way up there.
Yeah.
They are up there with amongst the best. They are the best you can do when you can't repeat the goodness of the OG.
Sure. I actually would say that I would say Kylo Ren is the best Star Wars character. At least he's the most fun to watch. I just love.
He's a spaz.
He's
just unpredictable.
Yeah.
Where Darth Vader was under control, he is not.
Right.
So you knew that Darth Vader's intentions were always going to be hardcore.
Right. And he's going to be a motherfucker to stop.
He's not beatable.
Right.
On a one-on-one basis, except for, of course, the Return of the Jedi. But
sure.
But every other thing where anybody encounters him, he is the epitome of intimidating. He is
perfect example, Rogue One.
He is the timeless young Mike Tyson.
Right.
He can't be stopped. He can't be beat. He can't be reckoned with.
He's singular.
He is singular. So I would say that actually Han Solo and Darth Vader are the most important characters, the most unrepeatable, the strongest characters.
Sure.
And so no matter what you do, you can do an old Luke, you can do an old Ben Kenobi, you can do a young Ben Kenobi.
Sure.
You can change the actor. I mean, they didn't do that with Luke.
Right, because like for instance, a Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan movie, which I think they're almost certainly going to do at this point. They've kind of announced it.
Where
it's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
Because it's going to be Obi-Wan on Tatooine, like dealing hopefully with like the Hutts doing some shit.
Yeah, and while...
and I don't want to see a single goddamn stormtrooper in that movie. If the Empire is involved at all, I'm going to be really upset.
No Empire. Although, he is hiding from the Empire the entire time.
That's true. It would kind of make sense for a patrol to come down and cut their heads off.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to encounter a lot of sweet stuff. But I think that actually, that kind of track is much more pleasing stuff. But honestly, it's pretty much anything. I'm not that much of a nut hugger for Harrison Ford. I think he's great. But, I mean, it's not like he's the greatest actor of all time.
No. But he's been very, very lucky.
Yes, but not. It's a mixture of luck.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he was, at one point, I remember, he was in 8 of the top 10 grossing movies of all time. Or some crazy number.
Yeah, well, if
like
you
that.
look at, like...
all the Star Wars, all of the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
And then you take, not all, but, the original ones. The 3 Star Wars... The original 3 Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then The Fugitive.
Sure.
That's 7.
Right.
And then I forget what the other one was.
He's got a few others.
Yeah, but the other ones that were just like insane.
Sure.
That he took it. So you take this thing where, in this world of alpha male discussion and
which is based on a debunked theory about dogs, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. But there is.
But it's a way to think about.
Sure, I'm not
power
talking about it being a real
social
thing. I'm just saying that it's a part of our culture to discuss these things. At least in the dudes,
right?
They discuss this stuff. There's the alphas and the betas, and
which
blah,
is
blah, blah.
an identifiable strata of person.
Right, and there's a range of everything.
Even if it's not like sociologically correct.
I've encountered plenty of dudes that I am like intimidated by.
Sure.
And plenty of dudes who are very intimidated by me.
Sure.
Because they're softer and squishier than me.
Sure.
And other dudes who are more resolved and more forthright and more confident than me and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
That range exists.
And just because I know how people will react to things like this, none of this has anything to do with value as a person. And
right.
It
That's not the point.
Should go without saying.
Or it should go without saying. But Han Solo is the most immutable alpha.
Right.
Except for...
when he meets Darth Vader.
Darth Vader.
Yeah. And I love that scene because he just opens fire instantly and is instantly shut down with no effort at all.
So he just is not as powerful.
Right.
But he never abdicates
No,
anything.
no.
He just gets whooped.
He's not like, oh man, Darth Vader, we better run.
He's like, what are you doing on Saturday? You want to hang out? He doesn't do that.
No.
He's not interested in like, dude, I could probably gain some of this dude's mojo.
Right.
That's not something that happens.
No.
But there, he remains, he's himself exclusively. He doesn't adapt. He doesn't do anything. He changes nothing.
Right, and that's a way that I like. If you have to keep telling the story of Han Solo, Luke, and Leia 30 years later, it makes perfect sense that they never got married and that he fell back into his old ways of smuggling and that sort of thing. Because what is he going to become a politician with Leia?
No. And the other thing is that if they're still they're desperate to recreate his power, his potency.
Oh, sure, with Poe Dameron.
Which is 50% of it.
Yeah.
And then the other 50% is the new, what's his name? The Codebreaker guy. What's the actor?
Benicio del Toro. I think his character's name is DJ.
DJ. Okay. So he's the other side. He's the self-serving, roguish
traitor.
Right. But they had to throw both Poe in there.
Right.
Who is an analog.
Yeah, he's
the
ace
new
pilot.
He's the new placeholder for the placeholding that was Han Solo.
Right.
And then you have, of course, DJ,
right,
who's another one, and obviously Benicio del Toro, the actor quality. He's an excellent actor.
He's a lot of fun in this movie.
He's a lot of fun in this movie. I
really like the stutter. Oh yeah, he'll be back.
Yeah, exactly. So he is taking up a little bit of the slack. Mm-hmm. So nobody can do. Anyway, that was a long-winded way to say that Han Solo and Darth Vader are the premier powerful characters.
Yeah, they're certainly the most iconic, definitely more iconic than Luke, because Luke's the hero, but he's just a hero.
In fact...
Which isn't bad.
I'm saying that arguably Han Solo beats, not in a fight, but as far as character potency, because I'm on a total potency tangent here.
Sure.
He beats Darth Vader.
Yeah?
Yeah, because they used a different actor to portray young Darth Vader. Twice.
That's true, yeah.
So
it didn't work that well.
And we bought it.
Did we?
Gosh. I mean, we have to because it was an unmasked version
I would say version. We accepted it.
We accepted it, but I mean, you can do it because Darth Vader is a voice and a uniform.
Right, and he at one point didn't look or sound like that.
Right.
So it's kind of built into the character that you can do that. But I wish the prequels had been made now and that Adam Driver had played Anakin.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Because he's just like even if George Lucas had written it.
Yeah.
He can act without any dialogue, and I know exactly how he's feeling.
Yeah. Instead of good Anakin is flat and bad Anakin is flatter.
Right. Yeah. Blank expression, mildly annoyed expression.
Yeah.
Creepy smile.
Irrepressible love looks like he might be choosing through the drama section at the video store.
Right. Yeah. And his most charming face is very rapey and scary.
On a picnic in the sunshine.
Yeah.
He looks like he's thinking about how to hold someone down and choke them.
Right.
Which he, of course, adopts as his favorite means of punishment.
Right.
Holding people down and choking them with his mind.
Right. And then he does it to his dear pregnant wife.
Yeah. He's into the chokes.
Yeah, he's a bad egg from the beginning.
He's a creeper.
He's a creeper.
So I'm going back. It's Han Solo all day. The number one character in all Star Wars.
Yeah.
Han Solo.
I can get behind that.
Can't win.
So given that, how do you feel about his death? Because I think, like we talk about how, well, now we're telling this story, and we've decided to do it this way. So get on board or abandon it all.
Right.
So I'm getting on board because that's what I've decided. But it does make me sad to know that these characters who had a happy ending now are miserable.
Right.
And die.
Right.
Luke gets a nice send-off, and I really like how he goes out.
Yeah, he turned into an appropriate advice ghost.
Right. And I like that he gets to maintain his pacifistic position that he sort of began in Return of the Jedi and then abandoned and then went back to, of the I will not fight, winning by being above
and
war.
Self-sacrifice.
And self-sacrifice, yeah, exactly.
So then we go returning to the Judeo-Christian thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, self-sacrifice to save the many, yeah, definitely.
Yep.
But yeah, I like that he got to confront Kylo and save the rebellion, but he also didn't have to actually fight anyone.
Right.
And he never had to leave the island.
He never had to leave the island
Yeah.
because he was comfy there.
Right.
Right, with his fish face slaves.
Yeah. Well, they were friends.
So it's, if you just take a slave and you say they like it.
Just like the house elves in Harry Potter.
Yeah, they just like it.
Right.
They don't really have any other way of being themselves. They don't have any desire outside of servitude.
Right.
Super convenient. They're super into it.
Well, it exists in real life. It's called dogs.
Yeah, with the ability to wash windows and repair laser holes.
Right.
In stone houses.
Yeah. I wonder what the deal was with the Jedi when they set up that temple. Were they were natives? Luke says they're natives. So I guess the Jedi are like, listen, we're gods, basically.
Yeah,
so just clean up after us, please.
If I mentally build dome structures out of slate,
right,
will you maintain them perpetually?
Even though I could pretty easily fix any mess.
I don't need you to do this because I'm good at lifting and washing windows with my mind.
Right.
But if you guys do it when I'm gone,
it'd be really helpful.
Super helpful.
Yeah.
Also stock it with fish, blah, blah, blah. I'll return occasionally.
Right.
I'm super important.
Right.
If that's not obvious, but be slaves.
Yeah.
And like it, and they're like, hell yeah.
I like to imagine that maybe the Jedi saved these people from an asshole.
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh, we owe you a debt of gratitude forever. And all of our children forever.
Yes.
We weren't going to leave this island anyway, and we're bored.
Yes.
So we're just clean up after you.
So here's another thing, just that I just thought of.
Yeah.
So what's my two big gripes with superhero movies in general, which I count Star Wars as being superhero movies.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Just a different genre, not Marvel or DC, but superhero movies. You have superpowered individuals who do a lot of saving and fighting of bad guys.
Right.
Superpowered bad guys.
Yeah. So you don't like that they can't be singular because it's just an actor playing the part.
At least the live action.
Right.
It's always Ben Affleck as Batman.
Right.
It's not Batman like in a comic or a cartoon. You never have to split personas. It's always just Batman.
Right.
Instead of someone I'm familiar with portraying someone I am also familiar with.
And again, that's the problem with this other guy being Han Solo.
Right.
My brain, it's not willing, it's not me being unwilling, it's that my brain won't accept another person as that character.
Right. Somehow, Han Solo effectively produced a character that was intricately tied and permanently tied to himself.
Right.
Just like a comic book drawing is permanently intricately tied to Batman.
Sure.
The whoever Bruce Wayne's face looks like, it's not anyone portraying Bruce Wayne, it is Bruce Wayne.
Right.
Literally.
Right.
And specifically.
And what's your other thing?
My other thing is the taking away of powers.
Right.
To humanize them, which is a rampant problem in all superhero movies.
Right.
So I kind of feel like a little bit.
I like it.
Not sometimes. As egregious, but I kind of feel like episodes 7 and 8 were that in kind of a mini form of taking away the powers of the superheroes that I'm interested in seeing.
Mm.
And
with Luke cutting himself off with the Force, or
cutting himself off with the Force, and our protagonist
it's the only way you can explain him not coming to save Han when he found out he was about to die.
Sure.
But yeah, I get that.
I mean, it's self-imposed as opposed to externally imposed, like
when Spider-Man gets bummed out about his girlfriend.
Yeah, and just not to be Spider-Man, and it causes him to no longer have any of his powers. Or Superman in the early '80s giving away his powers so he can have natural boingo boingo with Lois Lane and have it not be Super Dick, which she might be harmed by.
Right.
And then you have Logan, who lost his power so he couldn't heal.
Because the adamantium's poisoning him.
The adamantium is poisoning him somehow. So he still has claws, thankfully. And it was brutal, thankfully, because every single instance of Wolverine should be breathtakingly brutal. Right. Because that is why everyone loves him.
He has knives on his hands.
And yes, he shouldn't be using it to harmlessly backhand bad guys onto the floor and not slicing them into equal parts.
Or stabbing them and then there's no blood anywhere.
One claw through the brain.
Yeah.
Right. Not little teeny trickles of blood from him almost poking them through and through.
Right.
Which is he does to the necks and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I'm just tired of them taking away superpowers, and it's just so that relatability, but I don't want to relate to a superhero. That's the point. I want to aspire to the superhero. I want to aspire to be the superhero. I want to imagineer their powers. I want to see the power of it. I
You want to vicariously live through
ass.
them.
My favorite superhero parts are the parts where in a close-up of the shitty Superman movie, and like this, shitty Superman movie where
the bullet goes into his eye?
Yeah, minigun, it's just harmlessly bouncing off of his retina.
Right.
That is fun.
It's a good moment.
Yeah. Anyway.
They put it in every trailer.
So I felt like I didn't get superhero Jedi action.
Certainly they didn't have Luke. Yeah.
They literally gave me the most of lifting Rey up and moving Snoke, moving her around against her will.
Right.
Her getting to lift some rocks.
Right.
For the first time.
Right.
And even Kylo Ren didn't do any really Jedi-y things.
He didn't really use the Force at all. It's true. If like this is a big nitpick because that fight scene in the throne room is awesome and it's like really violent.
But they should have kicked the crap out of those red guys.
Well, yeah, they should have at least used the Force a little bit.
Right, a flingy, pushy, shovey.
Like maybe not Rey, but Kylo Ren
should have. Yeah, they should have picked them up and smashed them together in the air.
Sure, or at least one of them.
If he can stop a damn blaster bolt, and then after he's ignoring it, he lets it go. A long time later.
In the introduction of his character,
we're like, dude, that guy can fling some shit.
Right.
And he can't anymore, apparently.
Yeah. The thing is, I like that scene so much, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to not.
And then they take Rey's power away by making her fight a female Red Guard.
That was a little odd. I mean, obviously, there's no problem with a female Red Guard being as strong as the other guys because it's,
Why can't she kick a dude's ass?
She can. She did.
I know, but why don't they believe that we think that she can?
Well, she did, though. We've watched
Why is there a female Red Guard only there for her to fight? Because
that is the odd
She didn't fight Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren fought 2 or 3 dude Red Guards.
Right.
Yeah.
And she fought, I think, 2 of them, maybe 3 of them total.
Yeah,
besides the part where
hardest challenge was the chick.
Yeah, that was odd.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I didn't notice that it was a chick until you pointed it out right after the movie, and it was my 4th time watching it.
Right.
In addition to the 15 times I watched a perfectly legal recording.
A perfectly legal recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't notice that it was a chick, the last guard that Rey takes out. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't really bother me, but it is kind of odd and notable.
We could go on with little nitpicky things we don't like.
Sure.
We could, and we're already an hour into this situation.
Yeah, but that's before editing.
Right. So, but I want to, do you have any other nitpicky things that you want to say? Mine is the bombers.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
2-mile-an-hour spaceships.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
That have to fly in formation?
Yeah.
That drop, bombs?
They're magnetically propelled.
How about just make them propelled?
Right.
At a distance.
Yeah.
And not have to fly over.
Well, it is
at
established.
2 miles an hour.
It is kind of established in this film visually that shields block projectiles, but they don't block ships. So you can fly under someone's shield.
Into someone's shield.
To shoot once you're no longer...
It still doesn't answer the reason that they have where they fly at 2 miles an hour.
Yeah, no, it's too slow.
It was too slow.
I think, you could make all the bombers get destroyed without them
They're like, dude, we have no more ships except for these really bad mail trucks.
Right.
That we used to use to deliver space packages.
Right.
And they got decommissioned because nobody got their packages on time.
I would have liked it if they.
That's why we have them.
Right.
Space packages, ships.
Listen, we're running low on funding. We're the resistance.
We only have 2 mile an hour UPS trucks.
I actually would have been fine with it if they'd said that.
And now we have them dropping some kick-ass bombs in space that drop.
Magnetically propelled.
Yes. Let's hope that the hull of the bad guy ship is, steel.
Right.
Which wouldn't really be great in space.
Right.
On account of its problems with temperature.
Right.
Anyway,
Well,
that was my nitpicky thing. Too
Sure.
slow, too slow. And so maybe the things that we like,
yeah.
since we had just spent an hour saying that we were doing a positive review and then nitpicking the shit out of Star Wars.
Hey, I said some good stuff.
It's true.
Yeah.
I did anyway.
Yeah, we both did.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
There
let's see.
there was a lot more one-liner attempts at humor in this
Yeah.
than before.
Ooh, here's a
Some
good
of them
question.
were good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Force Awakens, they had there's good liners too that actually made me laugh out loud.
Oh, me too.
For sure.
I don't think I laughed out. I maybe laughed out loud a few times, and I will say there actually were some jokes that I thought were funnier on a rewatch than I thought at first. Like, what did you think of the prank call?
I loved it.
Good, me too. It's
I loved
so
it.
good.
But it did contribute to the apparent buffoonery
Right.
of the high command of the First Order.
Yeah, I like that he's calling General Hugs, and and it makes sense that would work. It
guess.
just makes sense enough.
A prank call.
You know, he's pretending that he's been put on hold. I think that's it's kind of a callback to Han Solo's little brief call. on the
Yeah,
Death
how
Star.
are you?
Right.
Yeah. I'm fine. How are you?
Right, and it makes sense that when you're using guerrilla tactics, you're a resistance. You'll think outside the box a little bit about your tactics. So I
Yeah.
actually loved that as
See,
well.
Han Solo wasn't trying to play a joke. He just didn't ad lib well,
Right.
and that actually is powerful. That's powerful character development
Totally.
because it seems like inherent failure or inherent flaw in the character, and inherent flaws when not a superhero
Right.
is endearing.
Right.
Superheroes' inherent flaws are not endearing.
Because at least he's trying to ad lib.
Right. He was.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
How are you?
Yeah. Well, that was great. So what we did like,
Prank call. Love it.
love the prank call.
And that's another criticism of the movie. People think the humor is like too modern or too.
It was.
Okay.
It was too relevant to normal 20th century American life.
21st century.
What year is it? Yeah, 21st century American life.
But the old
Actually,
the old
20th
films did-
century too, because prank calls were a thing in the 1900s.
That's true.
Huge in the 80s. It was
Probably
a big
bigger
deal.
than now. 'cause
Yeah, in
there's
fact, there
caller
was
ID.
like a radio bits that were based on, what are they called? Anyway, these guys who pranked everybody.
Sure.
And we used to prank people on telephone because there was before caller ID, so you can get away with that shit.
Right. Exactly. So even more so then.
Yeah.
So that is 20th century. But the other films, correct me if I'm wrong, they used pretty like common nomenclature too.
Which ones?
The original films. Like, hey, you want it from me fair and square. No one says fair and square anymore.
True.
There's a few.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think that's out of place either. As I said, I'm willing to accept almost anything in Star Wars now as long as I like the movie.
Yeah. So yeah, I liked it. Prank call.
And you know what that is? That's the correct version of when people say, oh, you don't like the prequels, then you're not a real fan. Well, unconditional love isn't healthy anywhere.
Right. It's like when people get pissed off just because you watch your local sports team only when they're in the playoffs.
Sure.
Like, don't get pissed off. I just honestly care a little bit.
Right.
Yeah? And I don't have a social obligation to care a whole bunch.
Right.
Or to measure my care against the length of your care side by side when our cares are erect.
Exactly.
You know?
Thank you for putting it that way. And by the way, I love the prequels. I just acknowledge that they're horribly messy, badly made, horribly acted, horribly written movies.
Yeah.
But I like watching them.
I do too.
And I like the Star Warsy stuff in them. So I am a real fan, and don't tell me I'm not just because I acknowledge that they messed up the canon.
In fact, you're more of a fan because you just will let them be themselves and just like not argue with them.
Right. I don't have to make excuses for them because I know they're terrible, but they're
Kick-ass.
still
I
talented.
love Star Wars contradictions.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's part of the world.
Yeah.
It's part of canon.
True.
works for me.
Contradictions are canon.
Right.
Wonderful.
Well, they really are because you have Obi-Wan with the certain point of view thing in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. From a certain point of view.
Right. And Luke's like, a certain point of view?
Yeah.
Are you an asshole?
Yeah.
Obi-Wan? Yeah.
He is kind of.
Okay, but things we like, prank call, great. I just love Rey. I love her heroic optimism. I love her line when she says, you didn't fail Kylo failed you, I won't. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I want in a hero. I want to feel like, yeah, you tell him, Rey.
Yeah, she's super alpha.
Yeah.
She's a great character.
And I love the moment when the apparently female Praetorian Guard takes at the thing and Rey just swings her lightsaber and shrieks at her.
Yeah.
Just screams at her face. It's awesome.
Yeah.
She's just kick-ass. I love her. And I
Yeah.
can't wait for her to have a double-bladed lightsaber.
Yeah. Finn is okay too. He's fun.
Yeah,
I didn't get as much of what I liked about Finn in this one
I agree.
as I did in The Force Awakens.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Finn too.
Yeah.
I actually think his funny little antics and trying to act like he's not abandoning ship, I think that's fun.
Yeah. He is also another. He is a smaller
piece of Han Solo.
He is a smaller piece of Han Solo than the other two.
Sort of the Return of the Jedi side of Han Solo.
Yeah.
Where's a little goofier.
Yeah, and he has the same level of. No, it's a smaller percentage of romantic potential between himself and Rey, as there was.
Sure.
There was a lot more of a projected potential romantic situation between Han and Leia.
There's a lot of potential romance in this new one. I mean, you've got maybe
Poe when Poe and Rey introduced themselves, there's a little bit of a sparky poo there.
they even sort of reference "I love you, I know." I'm Poe, I'm Rey, I know.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, I love that line because this whole movie, Rey is searching for her place in the world, and she feels like she's nobody. And also, first, she thinks that Luke is going to be the savior of the rebellion, and then that's a failure. And then she thinks Kylo will be the savior of the rebellion because she offers the lightsaber to Luke and he doesn't take it. And she's like, all right, then Kylo's our last hope.
Yeah.
She doesn't even think about herself as being considered possible.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah, and then finally she is the one who saves the rebellion, and they all see her do it. And Poe is like knows who she is. She's somebody now.
Right. Well, because he's super tight with Finn and Rey are super tight too.
Right.
So they have this triangle, the Luke, Leia, Han Solo triangle.
Which would be great to see in the next movie because we don't get all three of them together ever.
Right. And it's like equal friendship, just like those three.
Right.
Which is super nice.
Yeah.
Because I thought that group really, really works. Mm-hmm. It really does. That triangle really, really works.
Yeah.
You have the awesome dude who's overtly not Force related.
Right.
And then the awesome dude who is Force related, and then the chick who is, except for now it's the chick and the dude who are reversed. Because it seems like obviously Finn is slightly Force related too, considering his ability
be surprised
with
if he starts training
a lightsaber. Mm-hmm. So he's probably the same level as Leia was.
Right. And
where she gets the telecommunication Force earbud, but not any of the propelling farts. I can shoot myself through the air with the power of my toots or whatever it is.
But she literally did do that, though.
Oh. Well, anyway, I don't know how they get the Force to get them up and poof.
Right.
Get them up in the air.
Well, I mean, she did do it in space. How'd you feel about that moment? Because that's another criticism. People say Leia flying through space looks silly and dumb.
I didn't like that part.
Yeah?
I didn't like that part.
You know, it's so funny. It's almost embarrassing now because of how much hatred it's gotten, but I actually teared up when I first saw that part.
You loved it?
It really was effective to me. I liked the reprisal of the theme. I like that we finally see her using the Force. I get people saying, it's like Superman Leia, and the way it's shot is a little just kind of odd.
Yeah, but she saves herself with the Force.
Right, it's almost like an instinct.
Right, which I guess there has to be because otherwise Kylo Ren wouldn't have so much inherited Forcey goodness.
Right.
So he had to get it from somewhere because he did not get it from Han Solo. Because Han Solo is a skeptic and has no mojo.
Right.
No Forcey poo.
Right.
But so she does that, and I thought it was unlikely because space is like.
It sucks to be out there.
It's so immediately bad for you.
But
it boils the nitrogen out of your blood.
It takes a couple minutes to kill you, though.
Yeah.
And she's not out there for long.
No, she isn't out there for long. It was okay. It was okay. It's not so much the surviving of space.
I could have done without it, but
it was the explosion that took out the hull.
Right.
And
every other commander.
That left her unmarred.
Right.
Right.
The explosion didn't burn her at all, didn't hurt her. Maybe she was protecting herself with the Force, but we didn't really see that.
She got no shrapnel or burns, nothing. I don't know.
And Admiral Akbar died off screen in that moment.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're gonna gripe about us, one of the main characters not getting blown up or shot, then there isn't a movie that includes an action sequence except for No Country for Old Men.
Right.
That we shouldn't nitpick.
Right.
Because then our protagonist gets a body full of lead.
Right. Every time.
Never gets a body full of lead.
No.
Thus the famous stormtroopers can't hit the broadside of a barn.
Right.
Trope.
Right. Even though they're incredibly accurate.
Too precise for sand people.
Right.
these points.
Because
these
you
blast
need to have
points.
tension in your story, but you also need all the characters to survive.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? God damn it!
I actually, one of the criticisms that I see a lot, or thought at first, but now I actually like, is the slowest space chase scene
Oh yeah,
of all time, through space and also this idea of fuel.
sure. The basically, to recap, the idea that the Resistance cruisers are fast enough to make the laser bombardment ineffective, but once they run out of fuel, they'll catch up and be able to destroy them.
Right. So at first you're like, oh my gosh, it's the slowest chase scene ever. And why do we have a limitation on speed somewhere in between the jump to light speed and...
Right.
But of course there's fuel
There has to be.
of some kind. I assumed it was going to be a Star Trekian situation where you have tried lithium
infinite
somethings
generator.
or dicrystallide flubbadubs
Right,
or
right.
something that was perpetual power source, like Iron Man's thing, the arc reactor.
Oh, yeah, the arc reactor,
seems to
yeah.
never really run out. Or maybe he just kind of soups it up. He never bothers telling us when it gets low.
Right.
But
For all intents and purposes, it's
right, but these ships, why don't they have? Of course, they have fuel.
right.
Of some.
We see them fuel up in the first movie ever.
That's true.
Yeah, they got the big pumps that they unscrew.
Yeah,
from
the Millennium Falcon has to fuel up.
Well, the original idea, what got George Lucas a full team of awesome set designers and things and special effects people, is basically saying, like, in this universe, spaceships are things that you would have in your garage.
Sure.
You want to think about
It's
them.
a hunk of junk. It's sitting
Right.
over there.
Right.
Right.
It's just how you get around.
It's that Millennium
It's
Falcon.
not a Star Trek or Jetsons extravagance. It's
Right.
just mundane. It's in your garage. You
Right.
fuel
It's
it
a
up, you
car.
maintain it.
It's a car.
Right. And
a
the
vehicle.
Millennium Falcon was
There's
like,
nicer ones and shittier ones.
Right.
No big deal.
Yeah.
No, so, and then of course, it's going to look like a slow chase because relativity,
right.
because it doesn't really matter.
They could be going 500 million miles an hour.
And and to anyone else who's hanging around them and traveling at the same speed, it would look like two ships
Not moving.
sitting in space,
Right.
just not going anywhere.
How did you feel about the fact that the lasers arc as if there's gravity?
Yeah.
That bothers me.
Ugh.
I think that's dumb. That's
Yeah,
probably
but I
one
mean,
of my
I'm
biggest
not Neil
nitpicks.
deGrasse Tyson, so we're okay.
See, I'm not either, and I detest Neil deGrasse Tyson's insistence upon like bringing actual science into
To
every
science
sci-fi movie ever.
fiction.
Right.
Right.
Like, come on, buddy.
Yeah,
just
it's okay. Let it
get on
happen.
board with the movie.
Yeah.
But it is
I would not want to watch any movie with him.
no.
No.
Given that, I guess it is a nitpick. It really is, because I
Yeah.
don't think about it at all now. But in the original films, you see that sort of bombardment, and there's straight lines.
Right.
I've never. This is the first Star Wars movie ever where there's an arc to any laser.
Sure. But the thing is also the speed of any vessel being shot at with laser bolts, unless they're not light, like lasers are that we perceive of.
Oh, sure. Which they're not. They're like
No.
they're like contained.
It doesn't
plasma or
matter
something.
how fast the projector of the laser is, because light speed is always light speed, no matter how fast. There's no, like, if I go faster and light bounces off of me, or I shoot a laser, if I'm 45 miles an hour and I shoot a laser, it's not light speed plus 45 miles an hour.
Right.
So you can't have the rebel vehicle traveling out there and have it be, unless there's a dissipation of strength.
Are you saying that the lasers are traveling at light speed? Because they're not.
They must not be.
Yeah, they're not.
So they aren't.
They're not even lasers. We call them lasers because.
Well, laser sword.
Right.
He actually says laser sword,
Which
but
I
that's
loved.
not the blasters. That's the lightsaber.
Right. Yeah. Well, no. I think in canon, all blasters are like contained plasma.
Right.
That like their containment bursts when they hit something.
Okay. So it is actually a bolt of something.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So then that makes sense. I'll allow it. But even still, the fuel's running out. We have a bunch of hourglasses
Right.
given to us,
16 hours.
so that there's hourglass scenarios all the time. It's 6 minutes on board. It's 16 hours till they have to get on board the cruiser,
Right.
Snoke's ship, to do blah blah blah.
deactivate
They have
the
6
flux
many stuff. They have
capacitor.
16 hours remaining of fuel,
Right.
and all that stuff puts, gives me a sense of urgency and gives me my panic chemicals
Sure.
because they have to hit these hourglass
And also, they
before the sand runs out.
it's kind of stressful watching the
Right.
fleet get taken out. And like they
Yeah.
really get fucked up.
I just feel like
It feels like the battle's over by the end of the movie.
perpetually.
Yeah.
From the very first moments, the battle was over.
Right.
And they stretched the shit out of that
Yeah.
final death sequence of
Yeah.
the rebellion.
Of the transport ships getting blown up as they flee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I kept trying to keep track.
Me too.
Yeah, because I was like, no, they kind of squeezed them out. They're out. Oh,
Yeah.
they have 7, 8 more.
Right.
Oh, and then they shot 6 more. Oh, they still have.
7, 8 more. Yeah.
It's okay because it doesn't matter because I had my hourglass time sequences that my
Right.
emotions were attached to. So I felt compelled, like, gotta get it done, come on, guys.
Right. You can do it.
You can do it.
I love that moment when Holdo gets the message from the guy. He's like, should we turn around? And she's like freaking out. She's like, no, you gotta make it. And then he explodes. I thought that was just a really dramatic moment.
Yeah.
It's another thing I really like.
Yeah. They pulled off drama, which is really everything else aside, the science accuracy, the canon accuracy,
Right.
the character comparisons of old and new.
Yeah, the question of whether this was the right story to tell in
Right.
the first place.
Well, the fundamental question every single Star Wars reviewer or rater
Right.
is asking, when you really get down to it, what they're really asking is this movie that I'm watching right now capable of, on its own, creating Star Wars hysteria like A New Hope did?
Or at least Star Wars feelings.
Right. Well, no, I mean, is it, because really, I always have to bounce it back. Do I feel the Star Wars feelings?
Right.
So what you're saying. Exactly. But the thing is, like, when it comes down to it, you're like, if this was just the only Star Wars movie,
Right.
would there become a culture?
Sure.
Would this create the fervor? Would this create the Star Wars culture that A New Hope did on its own?
And I think just because of just the nature of catching lightning in a bottle and the pure timing of, like, 1977 was
Right.
the perfect time for that specific story.
It's a
story to be told.
swashbuckler pirate/cowboy drama in space.
Right. And that's exactly what people needed in 1977, and that can never be replicated. But I think if Force Awakens and Last Jedi existed in a vacuum, they would be very, very successful, and people would probably love them, although some stuff would be kind of confusing.
Some stuff would be very confusing.
But also, that's how the original films were.
True. Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything we haven't covered.
I think we did a good job.
Yeah, I agree.
Plus, I have to micturate.
Okay.
Super bad.
Sure.
So, lady and gentlemen, I'm going to assume one of each of you listen to this in the entirety of the history of the rest of the world.
Right.
I want to say thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
And,
Well, should we give like a final score or some final thoughts? Should we do a final thought thing?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to give this a perfect score. I'm not going to give it any sort of numerical value because I'm saying it's perfect.
You liked it.
Well, I'm not saying I did like it.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's a perfect film, but for my money, I like it more every time I watch it. I like it the more I think about it. I think it raises a lot of cool, interesting questions.
Gives you a project for what if this, what if that for the future.
Exactly.
Lots
it
of that
raises
stuff.
A lot of cool
Optimism
questions.
and anticipation.
And it sets up a great grouping of characters like we were talking about. I'm
Yeah.
excited to see what the Resistance looks like in the next movie and what they all do together.
Right.
Action scenes, super fun, super cool.
Right.
Super different from how every other Star Wars movie plays out. Just in terms of plot and expectations being
Crippled the
subverted.
shit out of the First Order.
Yeah, and that's the thing people
crippled the
forget.
shit.
People are like, oh man, the Resistance lost. Well, yeah, there's only 30 of them, but also they have incredibly unstable leadership now.
Right. The SJW, purple-haired self-sacrificer,
Right.
college professor.
Uh-huh.
She actually kicked the shit all by herself.
Which was a great moment
Here's a question. Those first 2 ships that they lost in their fleet,
Right.
that they kept moving personnel up to the front that ran out of fuel, why didn't they turn those
They all
around?
could have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
that
they sacrificed a dude each time
right.
to pilot it.
Yeah.
Each time. Turn that shit around, fly it through, motherfucker.
I guess I'm okay. It doesn't really make sense, but I'm okay with saying this is the first time anyone ever thought to do that, even though there's no way that's true.
Yeah.
Because it was just such a cool moment.
It was actually visually awesome.
Yeah.
That scene was kick-ass.
Yeah.
I loved it.
And then the sound effect of the explosion from super far away. Yeah.
I don't even know. It's great, though.
I did a pretty good job just now.
Okay, so you said...
I love it.
Out of a 0 to 1, you give it a 1.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, agree.
Yeah.
Good. Love Kylo Ren, love Rey most of all. Well, both of them together I love most of all. I love their connection.
Left where it's left.
We forgot about the force time sequence. It's I didn't coin that term, but I like it.
What is it?
Like FaceTime for iPhone, but they're force timing.
Oh, yeah, force timing.
Some people call it force Skype, but I think force time is funnier.
Yeah.
I love this sequence. I love how they use just cutting back and forth to communicate they're having a conversation. I like that she first tries to shoot him, and he's like startled by it.
Yeah.
And I love all their conversations, and I love the sexual tension between them. And,
she has got a kind of little bit going on with 3 dudes.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is...
She's popular.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a one-on-one, good old-fashioned I love thee, well, I love thee as well.
Right.
It could have, there's nothing in their culture that I don't think that they couldn't be like, you know what, I need 3 men's.
You know what, that'd be great.
Yeah.
She turns Kylo to the light, and then they just all live together, just
in an
orgies all day long.
in a high-rise.
Right.
You know, and they maybe have a 3-floor apartment situation, and the dudes sit around and play ping pong and video games and shit like that, and then they're like, whose turn is
turn?
It? Yeah.
Well, Rey probably gets to choose. Let's be honest. She wears the pants in that threesome.
She does wear pants.
Definitely wears the pants in that foursome.
I don't use rating systems either, because my obtuse mind doesn't allow a sequence of things.
It's a great way to remove all nuance from an opinion.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of fun, and my instead of a 1 or a 0, all or nothing like Liam, mine is more of a, does it hurt the franchise or help the franchise? Does it assist my interest in that universe, or does it hurt my interest in the universe?
I'm going to say that's equally binary, but all right.
It is. I'm not saying it's not binary.
Sure.
I'm just saying that it's based on help or hurt.
Right.
For me, and it helps.
Totally.
It helps. So I do like the movie, but I am a skeptic, cynical negatist. So I seek out problems, because you can't be a problem solver if you don't discover all the problems first. Right. And I count myself a problem solver.
I think I'm the same way in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But one last question. Do you think Kylo Ren will be redeemed?
No.
I don't either. And I think a lot of people think he will because he didn't kill his mother and because he has this connection with Rey. But how many times can you double down on being evil before it's too late for you?
Right. If there
Killed his father, destroyed planets,
right.
refused to accept a very reasonable offer from Rey.
Right.
He really could have joined them and destroyed the First Order pretty easily.
If there is, then it will be at his death, exactly like with Darth Vader.
And it can't even be that redeeming in my opinion.
No, he is pretty dark. Yeah. In an appealing way, because he's a spaz too.
Yeah.
Anyway, time to go.
That'll be it. Signing off. This
everybody,
has been,
thanks again. Everybody.
Every single one of you who listened.
There.
Yeah, hey you.
Hey you.
Who actually made it through the whole thing.
Yeah.
You get a special surprise at the end of this one.
Cheerio.
Here's the special surprise.